Well, happy Sunday, everybody. I certainly hope it's not as hot where you're living as it is where we are. It's a scorcher, as my grandmother used to say. But I'm happy to be, I think, as a wise man once told me, it isn't like there's anything I was going to be doing outdoors today. I was going to be inside trying to stay cool regardless. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Logic Live, everyone. It's Logic Live number 86. And we're starting our Summer of Flame series today for summer 2022 with our good friend Fred Warren from Autodesk. And Randy, you did it. You made it. Every time you do it, I go like, oh my God, really? I'm muted? Hello, Anna. Hello, Sibyl. Valentine, it's always great to see your face and to see your name. And John Ag is here. Oh my goodness. Yeah, rub it in, John. That it's only 12 degrees. That's 12 degrees centigrade. That means something. I'm not quite sure what that means. I, of course, live in a different country. My friends, here we go. Logic Live 86. This is going to be a great one. Hello, Mark Wellington. And Randy, even though you tried to get me with the technical thing, this is for you, my brother. You know what else is for you, my brother? I got a haircut the other day, Randy, and I'm streamlined now, which means I'm running probably about 20% faster, at least from here. But I think I might need to color correct a little bit of my hair. Maybe we could do that as a Logic Live, or as a Logic Academy. We could do me as a beauty subject. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Logic Live. Let's get started with our Summer of Flame 2022 with Fred Warren. But first, this episode of Logic Live is sponsored by Synesys.io. I just wanted to thank the entire team at Synesys, especially Steve and Petra. This is going to be the end of their sponsorship for a little while of Logic Live, and we never would have gotten this off the ground if it wasn't for their support. I owe so much to my friends at Synesys, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart. They have been such friends to not just to Logic Live, but to the Logic community and the Flame community as a whole. So thank you again, and thank you, Petra, for answering all the questions and shipping out all the merch and making everything just go so smoothly, especially when we were all in lockdown and we were all trying to figure this out. We're all eternally grateful. That's our friends at Synesys.io, solutions development, integration, and support. Supporting flame artists since 1997. Want to thank our friends at AJA for sponsoring Logic Live. Steve Losi, the man, the myth, the legend. Can't wait to see you again. If you're in need of tech support, give Jack Horrocks a call at jack@flametech.com.au for all your flame needs, whether it's building a new machine, custom, or if you're having trouble with networking, or you want to add new storage, if you want to fix something you got, or add some new kit to your setup, reach out to Jack at jack@flametech.com.au. If you'd like to be the second person to take advantage of the Boris FX discount code that we have for Logic.tv, you can save 15% on any Boris FX product, standalone or subscription, when you use the code Logic-15 at checkout. Thank you, Boris FX. Speaking of looking great, Randy, check out all the stuff we have at the Logic merch store. Whether it's hot where you are or cold where you are, like in the case of John Ag, you can find everything you need to look your best while you do your greatest work at the Logic merch store. We want to thank all of our patrons on Patreon. The numbers keep growing. We are up to 136 patrons on Patreon. Thank you, patrons. We could not do what we do without your support. Randy and I thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and we are trying to come up with new ways to give back to our patrons. If you'd like to become a patron for as little as $5 a month, get access to some exclusive content and some merch, and we would greatly appreciate it. You can go to patreon.com/logictv and sign up. Congratulations again to Brooks Tomlinson. When Lenovo offered us a fully loaded P620, we wanted to give back to one of our patrons, and that machine went to the lovely and talented Brooks Tomlinson. So congrats, Brooks. Thank you again to Lenovo for making that possible. And again, we've got more stuff like that in the pipeline for you. Returning July 17th, ladies and gentlemen, is RenderDome 3. Bert Hildebrand and Brian Bailey are going to go head-to-head in a conform showdown. That's right. If you're a fan of the timeline, and who isn't, by the way, you want to tune into this RenderDome on Sunday, July the 17th. live from what we are calling the Boris Effects Arena, which I believe is Brian Fox's converted garage, although I have really no leg to stand on when I talk about converting a space in your house to to create live streams. But Render Dome 3, the Conform Showdown. Again, it's Bernd Hildebrand from Hamburg, Germany, Brian Bailey from Dallas, Texas. We're going to do a conformed theme showdown, and the winner is going to get a 16-inch Cintiq Pro tablet courtesy of Wacom. That is on Sunday, July 17th, just 2 weeks from today. And thank you very much, Boris Effects, for making it all possible. Give you some quick stacks on the forum, which is half the reason why Randy tunes into these shows. That and to also try to prank me with things that are not actually going wrong. Forum stats for 2022. We're up to 1,144 users. That's up 5 from the last show. 871,000 page views. That's 70,000 page views in the last 2 weeks. 7,500 posts, and we're up to 384 users on Discord. If you haven't signed up for Discord, please do. Hold on. There we go. I said if you haven't, there we go. If you haven't signed up for Discord, please do. Join the conversation. We've got live chat going on there. We do screen shares. It's really just a wonderful place to hang out and communicate and socialize with your fellow flame artists. You can join that with your Logic Forum credentials at forum.logic.tv. We released 3 new classes of Logic Academy at the beginning of 2022. The first was the Beauty Techniques in Flame that I put together that covers all kinds of beauty topics under the umbrella of working as efficiently as possible. And we had 2 new installments from the lovely and talented Randy McEntee. The first was on the machine learning time warp tool that was gifted to the community by Andrei Toloshny. Randy goes into how to install it on Flame and Linux, and also deals if you have different GPU cards on Linux, the extra steps you have to go through to get that running. And he also did one called Setting Up PyBox. PyBox is a way to connect Flame to other applications in your pipeline. Randy showed an example of how to use Nuke. And we added those to our other offerings of Connected Conform in the Image Node from Jeff Kyle, and Intro to NDI and 8-Minute Aces, also by Randy McEntee. These are all available for free at logic.tv or on our YouTube channel. And we want to thank Autodesk for sponsoring Logic Academy. Speaking of thanking Autodesk for content, Grant Kay has been pumping out all kinds of content on the Flame Learning channel. He has a new series or a new module as part of his series, his fundamental series for new and upcoming Flame artists. So definitely check that out. If you know anybody who's just getting started with Flame, have them check out the fundamentals course from Grant. It's wonderful. And if you haven't already updated, please update to 2023.0.1 so you have the latest and greatest when it comes to running Flame. All right, my friends, like I said, it's the summer of Flame 2022, and our first guest from the Autodesk dev team is our dear friend Fred Warren. Fred is a senior product owner, an all-around great guy, and he's here to talk about the 2023 release and a whole bunch of other things about that. Let me bring Fred on the show. Hey, there you are. Hey, Fred.
Hello, Andy.
How's it going?
I'm doing good, thank you. The 2 things about your intro, like in Canada, when Celsius is 12 is cold.
Okay.
It's not super cold, but it is much colder than what we're going through right now here.
Yes. Okay.
And also, the last day of my vacation is July 17th, so I cannot think of a better way to end my vacation than Render Dome 3.
Amen, brother. Thank you, Fred. That's wonderful. Hold on, there we go. I'm imagining you and the family in the car racing home to try to get home, by 2 o'clock. And so that just touches me right here, right, Fred, right here in the heart. Thank you.
My wife will have to drive as I'm watching.
Right, and you'll have, I see multiple screens set up in the passenger seat of the car too, which is great. Oh, awesome. Lovely. Well, welcome, man. We're here to talk Flame 2023 and some of the new features and some of the kind of like the broader subjects or the broader strokes that went into this release. So why don't you take it away? Oh, I'm sorry. Before you start, if anyone does have any questions for Fred, please put them in the chat. I'll make sure that he does.
Oh, yeah, and you can interrupt me at any time.
Deal.
I just wanted to mention, and I know that, first of all, there might be some repeating on my part because, when we did the release, the 2023 release. I was on mentioning some things, so I might like repeat some stuff for maybe people who were not there or didn't watch the first time. And also there are things that we still want to give you an update on, right? So so from the start, you guys know that like 2023 was not the release with the most, let's say, user facing features that were made available. And again, one of the reasons for that is that we are really working on some more architectural stuff right now. So we're talking about getting rid of OpenGL, but also we introduced Flame on the Cloud. We had to switch from CentOS to Rocky because Rocky 8.2 the support was dropped. We added also the support for Apple Silicon through Rosetta 2, but we're also working on the native support of Apple Silicon right now. So a lot of resources are dedicated to that. And we decided to have a release with a little bit less user features so that everybody can actually go through the architectural stuff as fast as possible. So I'm gonna start with the features that I didn't mention. Okay, back in the previous show that we did. It's not really kind of user facing stuff, and it's not also things that I can really demonstrate, but we're still gonna go through them so we can explain a little bit some of the gotchas, and then we will move on to the animation stuff, which is like the bigger, let's say, bucket for 2023. So I'm gonna start with just an update. So maybe you want to start sharing my screen at this point. Um, and let me just get rid of my Chrome window so we don't get so many feedback.
It's a different kind of flame feedback, right?
Yeah, that's it. Um, so I just wanted to quickly mention that we did a lot of, uh, let's say, re-architecture also on how we are delivering the software. So making sure that, for example, for people who are using multiple software, so if somebody has a Flame Assist and a Flare instead of a Flame or stuff like that, we do not duplicate the different files, configuration files on the same machine. So if you go, for example, to the setup application now, this is why you're going to see that we no longer have a single setup application per application, but we have it per version now. So like if you add a Flare, a Flame Assist, a Flame for this version, they will all share the same configuration files into a single application. And the same is true if we look here at how we distribute things now. Before, when you would install, and I'm using macOS here for the demonstration, but it's the same on Linux. For example, in the 2022.3 update release, you would have to navigate here. You would have the application and its own utilities per application. We would always create a open clip creator application per release. Now all the different, and you see that I have a bunch of Flame here because I have some like internal and development versions on my machine. But now all the applications are at the first level and they all share the same service monitor setup, uninstaller, and there's a single open clip creator application instead of having one per release. So just like a small update, just to make sure that everybody knows that we try to optimize like so diminish the size of the package and also optimize the configuration of multiple applications.
That's great. If anybody, I mean, I know I've had this happen. I'm sure anybody who has more than one version of Flame installed on their machine at any time has had has fallen into that trap where you have multiple config files, and you're trying to set up either NDI, you're trying to set up a different frame rate, and it's just like these are little quality of life things that just we love them.
I'm gonna switch to PowerPoint just because I want to talk to you about HDR UI. Unfortunately, I don't have a HDR monitor, but anyway, if I had one, it would make for a very boring demo, okay? Because the only thing that we did is that we allowed a mode where we're gonna apply a lot to the UI, so not to the image, right? We were already showing the image in the proper color space, as you know, with the color management. But the problem is that if you were working on the HDR project and you add a HDR monitor, things like the text on the buttons would be like super bright and it would be distracting. The text also like in the text module would be like really bright and super distracting. So now we have a mode where basically you're going to work on HDR content with a UI that would be like the same as if you had a SDR monitor. Just things to know, okay? You can enable that from the setup application. You need to make sure that the proper color space is set for your graphics monitor. On macOS, that's going to be done by default because macOS is already made to deal with that, right? And it means that if you are using this HDR monitor for your macOS, basically everything will be color managed in the OS to have the proper display. On Linux, it's not the case. So you're going to have to go manually set the color space of your graphics monitor. So we're talking about preferences, color management, controls. You will need to make sure that the appropriate color space based on your monitor is selected. Usually it's something related to PQ. And then avoid having your clip as tag as unknown, because in that case the clip will be really super bright and it will be like just way too much distracting and hard to work with. So you need to really deal with your color management properly in that situation. And also be aware that I mentioned that on macOS everything was taken care of. It's not the case on Linux. So for example, if you set it for Flame, your Flame user interface will be fine, but when you're gonna switch to, let's say, a web browser or another application, then the LUT won't be applied there. So there's gonna be like really a big difference between the color levels or the brightness between your Flame application and the rest of the other application inside the OS. So that's it for the HDR UI monitor. I also wanted to mention that we've done quite a lot of things related to Python in 2023. I know some of the usual suspects are doing who are
Sorry,
doing
I know that's selfish, but I have the button. It's fine.
I know, for example, like Michael, Mike V, was kind of concerned because we didn't do much in 2022.2 and .3, and it was like, well, what's happening with Python? We had to take a little pause because, again, we needed the resources to do something else. But in 2023, we went through a lot of stuff that was asked on the Flame feedback. So this is why I wanted to quickly go through it, because like people have requested those. So I just want to make sure that they were aware. The first one is just a little like warning for people who were using the app started Python hook. So you would like right away when the application would start execute something, we had to remove the app started hook for security reasons. So there's also the app initialized, okay, that can be used. So you will have to use that one instead of the app started. Quick note, for the tools, we have a Python hook to create custom actions that was available for action. So the get action custom UI actions Python hook. It's now available for image and GMass Tracer as well. Some of the Flame feedback that we have added for the Python API. So in the Media Hub, when you would import your clips using the Flame import clips function, it was not possible to, for example, the multi-channel is probably the one that was more problematic. Let me just switch here. So it was not possible to manipulate this button right here. So it would always import it based on the latest option that you would have selected. So sometimes you wanted a multi-channel clip, sometimes you didn't want it. So now it's possible directly from the Python API to set those. The other options there, the media cache, the media proxies, and the clip version are all the options that are available, in your Media Hub UI, just like where you would have the multi-channel clip. Um, I'm gonna switch back to the PowerPoint. Just two quick notes on the Python API for the media panel. So two requests and bugs that we had, getting the open close status of a batch group or library, and also being able to save a real group to the save destination. It was possible to save all the other objects, but the real group was not working in the timeline. So the bulk of the work that we've done was in a timeline. So we're added a lot of stuff again that was requested, like being able to set the markers and segments name with tokens. So being able to say name it like tracks underscore background index, being able to manipulate the RGB and map channel selection that we had added last year, being able to copy a segment to the media panel. So we did it with like copy, extract, or lift, and also all the match options. So when you go to the contextual menu of a segment, you have like multiple different options for the match function. All of those are now available in the API. And finally, a lot of stuff related to editing. So being able to insert, overwrite, replace, but also to do like trim, zip, slide. So all the like basic editorial operations that you can think of. We've added support for these. And also one thing that was brought up on the Logik forum, I think more than once, being able to set a gap color. So people always trying to do some slates, and also trying to do like put some black before and after a clip. So now you can just select a gap and assign it a color. So this can be done. The other stuff that are Python related, I wanted to just quickly do a small demo about them inside the application. Um, it's not things that you would use in custom actions, but for people that are like developing scripts, they can be super useful. So I won't spend too much time on them, but I just wanted to explain them quickly because they can really be a time accelerator. So as people who are doing Python scripts, and for the others, you're gonna see the difference. So if I wanted, for example, to go get the clip 12 in my scripts here, before you would have to go through all the different objects in the media panel. So you would go through Flame projects, current project, current workspace, desktop, the real groups, the reels, and then the clips, and then you could get the name for this, right? Where now, so just as a just as a ooh, just as a proof, so I would like play this, and I would get clip 12 as the result of my script. Uh, a few version ago, we introduced the media panel selected entries, okay, which is much quicker, but that is based on the selection. So I will need to select this, and then with this selected, I could say print the name of my selection, and I would get the same, okay. But if I wanted to print the name of a segment in my selection. Then I had to select it here and then make sure that I would go to like versions and tracks and segments and have an index, and then I would get the name of my segment there. So what we did, so what is new in 2023 that make it like much faster is that we've added a pi timeline object. Okay, so flame.timeline now exists. So the first thing that you can see here is that you can switch between any type of timeline. So if I wanted to switch to my source tab here, so I'm on sequence now, then I can execute that and it's gonna switch. If I want to switch back to my sequence, then I can, and that way I can make sure that in a script the sequence tab is the one that is always selected. Since I have my flame.timeline, it means that I can get, for example, the current segment of a timeline. So in that case, instead of going through all of this to go through the segment, I can just select a segment here, and with flame.timeline.current segment name, I'm gonna get the name of that segment. And the thing that is really also an accelerator is that you can, through flame.timeline.clip, have access to the object in the media panel for the current timeline. So in that case, if I wanted to know the bit depth of my sequence, I would just run flame.timeline.clip.bitdepth and it will return me 10. And one of the things that people ask a lot on Logik and on Flame Feedback was, how can I get the clip information based on a segment? Because before you would have to go through a lot of dot parent to go back to the clip level. Now you would just use the clip attributes, but on a segment. So they are all prefaced with source. So in that case, you would just say flame.timeline.current segment and then the source bit depth, and it will return you the bit depth of the clip, so of the sequence. So you saw that it was a 10 as well. So those are like the things that should help you develop your script much faster than before.
Oh, it's great, Fred. I know for the it's a narrow audience like the Python users out there, but it's just like these are quality of life things that just make it,
Yeah.
especially for someone who, still struggles with the syntax and everything with Python to not have to deal with all of the of kind of identifying your way through all the different parameters to get to the clip that you want is just wonderful. Thank you.
And it also reduces the chances of making a typo or like
No, that doesn't.
having the wrong index and things like that. So
Yeah.
things that if you've done some Python, you know that happen often. Um, so next up, I wanted to talk about the animation. Okay, maybe if you want, Andy, you can probably stop sharing my screen at this point because I wanted to do some talking before I actually show. Or if you want, you can like just keep it there is as you wish. Um, I wanted to go over again why we've decided to go with the animation as the main area of improvement. And I also wanted to maybe give you some hints on the thought process that goes into the development. And I think that with what we did with the animation is really a good example of what we went through. So I wanted to start. It goes back a little bit to what we've mentioned just like a few minutes ago with like all the architectural stuff. Okay. So we knew that we couldn't put a lot of resources on features, and we wanted to find someone that would like affect as much users as possible. So it could have been something like the timeline, like most of people will have to live with it. It could have been batch, but we've done some batch improvements. I wouldn't say like super recently, but in the past few years. And the animation is something that we didn't touch for almost 20 years. So we said, let's go with the animation. And we made sure, and I'm going to mention quickly the analytics aspect. And I'm going to come back to it just in a short while. But we run some analytics on the usage of the animation, and we saw that like close to 90% of the users from which we were getting data were using the animation menu at some point in their sessions. So we said, you know what, that's what we're gonna do. So the process that we did for the animation is we started with a kind of audit of everything we had. So we looked at every buttons, every workflow, every areas, every shortcuts, and we listed them and we said like, does it make sense? And to be totally honest, there were some things in there that even myself, who have been working like for more than 20 years on Flame, I was like, I don't know what that shortcut's doing. Okay, so we had to go find out like really some of the more obscure things that we were not looking at anymore. Some examples, okay, we found some shortcuts that were still in the shortcut editor, but that were not linked to any piece of code anymore. Okay, so you could assign a shortcut to it, but it wouldn't do anything because there was no code call behind it. We found some shortcuts that were like said that were named animation priority picking, and by looking into it, we discovered that it was actually for the legacy G mask, for like the tracer, the boxes, so the pickers in the tracer, that you could like use that shortcut to pick a vertex that is over over under a tracer. So things like that. So we renamed a lot of shortcuts. We did a good cleanup. We found some buttons that were not really working anymore, so we decided to get rid of them. Something that we're trying more and more to do is to just get rid of things that are not used, that are not working properly. So we really wanted to do a big cleanup. In the buttons, for example, like there was the swap button. That was a function that was like a super convoluted workflow for something that you people were really not doing. So we got rid of it, and so we did a bunch of cleanup there. Um, then we did validations with some customers, the to know like what were the idea, what were like the biggest problem that they had. From those validation, the the outcome was really that people were mainly using the animation menu to modify existing keyframes and not creating an animation from there. So this is why we focus really on this part, to make sure that the workflow is geared toward modifying something that you have done with the numeric fields, for example. And also we had like questions: are you using the animation in a viewport? And almost everybody said like, I cannot, because I don't have access to all the different buttons that are at the bottom, so I need to open the animation menu. So it would be nice to have it in the viewport, but I can't do much with it. So we took that workflow, we started to build our case. Then we, of course, I mean, you know me, we looked at flame feedback. One of the things that is super interesting when we do validations like that, and it's nothing against users, because I'm not saying it's the user's fault. It's the total opposite. But what is super interesting to us is when somebody requests something that already exists. And it happens more often that like one could think. And when that happens, it just tells us that the button is not named properly, it's hidden somewhere. There's a problem with how we present it to the user. So we went through this a lot as well. And I quickly mentioned the analytics, and I wanted to put an emphasis on it because, with like the GDPR, we are in a GDPR area where people are afraid to share data. Like, I just wanted to reassure people that we take it super seriously. Like, we are protecting the data, and we're not building with the data. We're not building like profiles. We're not like, oh, ND is using conform 75% of his time and he has clicked on those 12 buttons. For us, when we use the analytics, it's really to say, okay, those buttons, those shortcuts, we don't think that they are probably the most used. So we just run an analysis on the buttons usage. So when you guys click on a button, we know it, okay, but we don't know who clicked on it. We don't know like your name, and so we just know that somebody clicked. What we did is we said, for those buttons, those shortcuts, tell us in the next 3 months how many times they're going to be used. And from that, there was two things that I kind of deducted. Is there were some things that were never used. So in 3 months, basically a shortcut was not used a single time. So we're like, you know what? It's useless. People don't know about it. There's new way to do that. Let's get rid of it. And also things that I thought were useful but were not used. One example of that, and maybe you can share my screen, Andy.
Sure.
One example of that was in the tracks that we have renamed to a dope sheet, where uh, at the end, so we present you the keyframes now in the form of a square instead of a line, right? And we have the shortcut that would allow you to decide if you wanted to resize your channel. So when I would resize it like this, right? And let me maybe just do it on a single channel so it's a little bit more obvious. But when you would resize the channel, all the keyframes would be affected. But when you would click on the Q shortcut and do it, then only the keyframe would be changed. And I said to myself, you know what? There's a use for that. So you want to change the endpoint without moving the other keyframes. Uh, but the shortcut was very not used that often. So in that case, we said, you know what? Let's just put like two different icons, and that's going to be more obvious to the user. And it's going to also be more easy to like remember a shortcut. You just need to remember what happens if you click on the square and what happens if you click on the arrow. So at this point, it's basically the idea that I wanted to give you about the thought process. We can go over a little part of the demo. There's things in there that I explained, as I said in the previous one. I will also try to give you some hints on stuff that are not new, but that are quite useful to use in the with the new features that we have introduced.
Hey,
Um,
Fred, could I interrupt you just with a couple of questions that came in
oh
through the
yeah, of
chat?
course.
Paul was wondering if you could share a little bit of info about what the demographic is of the validation panel, like timeline versus batch users, commercial versus film users, and how that gets
Okay,
structured.
okay, that's interesting. I would say that it really depends on the kind of research that we're doing. One thing for sure, and I'm going to be totally honest, it's a little bit harder for us to get to people that are outside of the US and the UK, for example. But we're trying as much as possible to do it and to have more of a global demographic. For the usage, so in the case of the animation, I really, really went with, I think, the simplest approach and looked at people who had requested changes to the animation and contacted those people saying, like, you wanted like changes, you think that it's outdated, you think that there are problems, so why is it like what's not working for you? So we went with that approach. Right now we kind of opened the another research, so we've mentioned it on some Logic episodes, but also on the forum, where we say what we want to talk with people. In that case, I think we're taking a little bit of a different approach, where our first idea was let's talk with like a certain persona, and we switched and say let's talk to everybody, and when we talk to somebody that fits that persona, then we're gonna take that feedback and put it in that bucket. But we're gonna get like other feedback from other people that is still valuable for like other projects that we're thinking about. But yeah, it's a struggle to talk to people outside of our two main, let's say, countries. But we
Hmm.
do talk with people outside of them, and also it really depends on the features we're doing. We, if you think, and I know that there are people on the session that we've talked to, that we've used, like camera analysis, for example, is something that we did a chartering program where even before the beta cycle started, we went like send a build for some users. We did the same for the master grade changes that we made last year. Stefan did the same with the Flame of the Cloud, with
Hmm.
Rocky Linux, Dolby. So we're trying more and more to have people um, and I cannot find my word, but people like a little bit more implicated before we
Yeah,
actually,
before you get a big
yeah,
earlier on in the process. Yeah,
yeah, that's it. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't
Cool.
know if
Thanks,
that
man.
answers the question, but
Oh, that was good. Let me bring your screen back up and there you
yeah.
go.
So yeah, so just quickly, I know that we're already like short on time a little bit. It always goes super
It
fast.
always
Uh,
goes like that.
Yeah. So at the bottom, I already mentioned it last time, and I will just like quickly mention that like the highlights are we try to surface the buttons really that are the most used. We try to put on the left everything that is related to the list itself. We change the list so it's the same workflow look as the media panel and other list in the, so you get like common things like being to resize, but also, of course, the contextual menus. The contextual menus are also available anywhere, so on the keyframe and on a channel. So when we were talking about in the validation, people saying I cannot do like my work from the viewport because I don't have action to the buttons at the bottom right. So the solution for us was to do the contextual menu. I know that some people still prefer the buttons, and I totally get it. It's in Flames ADN, right? Or DNA, sorry, in English. The but still the contextual menu allow us to have much more stuff available. The reality is that with buttons we're limited in what we can put on screen, and the contextual menu allow us to make much more things available. um, so the UI, okay, and things like the color coding. Color coding, a super good example, and the of things that people were saying. It would be nice to color code the channels, but it was already there, like for the past 25 years. But it was kind of hidden in the same button where you would reverse, negate, bake a channel. So in that button, you would have actions, but also modes that you could change. So we cleaned that up. So now when you color code something in the media panel, in the timeline, it's the contextual menu. So now it's the same. So it's the same menu as elsewhere. So a lot of consolidation so that you get the same workflow throughout the application. Um, the things that I quickly wanted to mention also is in regards the the modifying instead of creating, right? So we added the filtering by default, and as of we change it. So if you follow like the threads on the forum, before we add the animated preset, which created a problem in a workflow that I didn't think about. So we changed it for animated and selected in the service pack for 2023. uh, so our goal there was really to say, if I work on something and I quickly want to modify it, I need to be able to access it as fast as possible. So before, the list would be filtered out, okay, and you would get that super long list. You could always select the channel and then do your shift tab to actually see it. But we wanted to almost get rid of that so that by default you would get to it no matter what. So now when you touch on a numeric field, we will auto select it by default. Before it was an option, and we removed that option and we said, you know what? It's going to be that way. So when you touch something, it's selected, but now it's also framed as well by default. Okay, so if if I have my animation here and I have my filter, okay, and we're gonna enable it with the animated or selected. If I'm here and I want to change one of those channel, or in that case, I'm just gonna shift click in it. Okay, so shift click is maybe something that it's not new in 2023, but it might be something that people were not aware of. But shift will select the channel. Okay, so if I shift click on it, it will be actually framed in my viewport right away. And even if I shift double click on it, it will open the animation view in the viewport with it actually selected. And one of the things also is that you see that here by default, just like before, you see all the different channels, but we have, and I'm going to use the contextual menu here, but the content is basically the same as all of these options here in the animation window. But by default, we now have show curves from selected channels enabled by default. So in that case, if I would shift click on my X position, I would get this. If I would shift click on my Y, then I would have my Y channel right away. And I wouldn't have the clutter of all the other different channels being there. So I could really concentrate on this. And obviously, I can always have Control Shift to add to the selection, or if you would from the list select, then you would have your stuff. Things that I think were quite popular the last time I showed it, so I just wanted to make sure that I would mention them again. Things like in the contextual menu, where you now have the possibility to select all the keyframes before, after, or at this frame. Okay, so you have the different channels there with the keyframes on really that frame, and then you can just delete. Okay, so you can say delete those keyframes, but you can also delete all the keyframes after this. So if you created unwanted keyframes and you had problem with your animations, then you would can quickly get rid of them. Uh, One small thing I wanted to mention, it's just one thing that I think people might try to find or say why did they get rid of it. Before, the scene folder here, or the scene entry, was a folder that you could collapse, so you could collapse your entire animation, and it was creating one more indentation, and we decided to get rid of it. Okay, so the indentation is on the left, and we didn't find like really a use case where you would just hide all your channels like that, but we kept the scene for the main reason that it's useful in the dope sheet if you want to resize your entire scene like that. And before, you could also collapse all the folders under it. Okay, so in that example here, if I do this, so probably all of you know that if I all click on transform to the ear, it's gonna collapse all the different folders that are under it. It's still possible to do it on the scene folder, even though it's no longer a folder. So in that case, you would all click on scene and everything will be cleaned up. So if you have too much stuff open, that can be a little shortcut that is still available, even if the arrow is not there anymore. I don't know, Andy, are we short on time? Do you want me to continue or?
That's the best thing about Logic Live is we're always and never short on time. These
Okay.
are all they're all self-imposed schedules. There were a couple of questions. Do you want to hear them now, or do you want to
Okay.
keep
Yeah.
going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
John Ag was wondering, is there a keep option in the contextual menu?
Oh yeah. 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 So maybe if I undo. Yeah. Sorry, I'm gonna do that. So yeah. So for example, here I still have my three keyframes selected and all the animation all around. So just below the delete, you can like keep current only, and only that keyframe was kept for those three channels.
Cool. Sinan was wondering, do we individually color tag channels, or is it possible to tag vectors as RGB on all channels? Like,
Okay.
can you make X, Y, and Z red, green, and blue by default, like that kind of
Okay,
thing?
that's interesting. Okay, first of all, it's not in 2023, but it's something that is on my mind to have the possibility as a preference to color code the XYZ as red, green, and blue. Okay, throughout the application, so they are color coded by default. What, but it, as I just mentioned, it's not available. But what can be done that is much faster than before is that if you use your filter, okay, so if you go to your set criteria and you say I want to filter by name and then say X, okay, and use this, then everything that is a X will be exposed. So we're gonna say expand the selected folder. So you see that I only have the X here, which means that you could then apply the color coding to this. So you could color all your X red and then all your Y green and then all your Z blue, for example. But you would need to go through it if you wanted, for example, to color code. something like, well, I don't know why you want you would like to do that, but maybe you would say, you know what, everything that is an axis, I wanted to give it a color. Then in your criteria here, you can use a comma, okay, to have multiple different names. So in that case, you would have X, Y, and Z, okay? And if you would close that, then everything that is X, Y, Z would appear, and then you could color code all of them, but then it would be the same color for all.
Cool. Love it. Tim Farrell was wondering in the dope sheet view, you had clicked on the end of a track or the last keyframe of a track. He's
Yeah.
wondering, can you move the keyframes in the middle of the animation by
Oh yeah, of
selecting them?
course, of course. And we decided to go with squares because before it was possible to do, but it was with lines, and the picking zone was really really small, right? So now, yeah, you can just grab a keyframe and move it. You're gonna see it move here as well in the time bar, right? But you can move it to a different location. You can move multiple keyframes at once. Basically, you can do everything that you could do. So you could do a keep, you could delete like all after. With the contextual menu, everything is available from that view as well.
That's great. Yeah, I have to agree with I agree with what Sinan just put in the chat. This is why I love when you come on and do these things, Fred. Like I knew that you could set criteria, but I didn't know that you could set multiple things in criteria with commas. So it's
Okay.
always like it's wonderful. Love it.
Maybe just for Tim, there's one thing, like one little drawback from using the squares um, instead of the lines. But if there were lines, they would be like really really close one to the other. But with the squares like that, of course they will overlap at some point. May I don't know if it's really visible through
Yeah.
but at some point they will overlap. But I mean, in that case, you can still pick them, but at this point, you might just want to zoom in a little bit and
Right.
to support them.
I guess the more you zoom out, they will ultimately become lines again. If you
Yeah,
zoom out far enough.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
there is continuity.
yeah.
Right. Beautiful. Yeah, I think we have time for one more, Fred. If you want to.
But maybe I just wanted to quickly highlight, or maybe, okay, I'm just gonna quickly highlight one more thing, maybe, Andy. In regards to the automatic framing. So that button here, so before we had the frame and frame out buttons at the bottom. Now it's a single button. The shortcuts have not changed, okay? But it's a single button with a drop down with the different options on the right. And the automatic framing has been changed. A lot of people were reporting situations on the forums where they were saying, I'm trying to pan and like it's always reframing. And it's because they had enabled auto framing without knowing it, because there was a shortcut associated to it, which was slash. Okay, so we changed the shortcut to shift slash, so it's a little bit harder to actually edit by mistake. And we also changed the behavior where now, where you have automatic framing on, because you could disable it, the framing is done when you select a channel. Okay, so it's no longer done when, for example, you pan and then we automatically reframe it. So in that case here, you would say that I could move it to the right, and if I wanted to reframe that, I could obviously use the frame channel shortcut, or I could just reselect it here. And the same is true in the schematic. When I select something, we gotta actually frame it and also make sure that it's selected and framed in your list there. So when I was talking about like being able to quickly modify something that you have adjusted, this is why a lot of the improvements that we did were geared toward this. And maybe just very very quickly, Andy, I wanted to mention three very small things, okay, uh, that are not related to the animation. The error reporting, again, something that on the Logic forum, people were saying like, "Oh, I didn't know that there was the Alt E shortcut to actually know the error reported by a node." We got rid of the Alt E and we replaced it with like the same workflow as for the tooltips. So if you put your cursor over, it's gonna return the error, okay, after a short while. So you just let it sit there, or you can use the same shortcut as for the tooltip, which is Control Alt W, and then you will right away what's the
It's
error
great.
on the
It's
code.
great.
Okay.
Oh,
A small thing. I know that this one, it's like it's almost not a workaround, but people were saying in text in the old Warper, I cannot apply a viewing transform. It's possible now, still not from the viewport because it's, as you know, like different than the other more recent nodes. But you can now go to view and actually select a viewing transform for the your image in text and the Warper. And also, I cannot really show it here, but a small thing which was not a problem on macOS because you can use the OS shortcut to minimize the application. But with so many people working remotely, the problem mainly on Linux was that if you would do a Alt Tab to switch to another application, the your remote connection software would use that shortcut. So you couldn't get rid of Flame. So we added in the Flame menu here, just below Exit Flame, a Minimize Flame and 3. So you can minimize it, and there's a shortcut associated to it as well.
love it. Thank you. I had a question for you. What you just showed in text there, being able to apply a view transform, does that option also exist if you go into the stabilizer, like inside the 2D transform mode?
Yes, I think it should. If I remember correctly, it was the only place. It was the only place that it was not available where text and Warper. So
Okay.
unless I, unless I'm mistaken, I think that now, like in the most recent tools environment, obviously you have it directly from the viewport here, but in the older module, you can go to the view menu and select the viewing transform.
Sweet. Wonderful. That may or may not have come up with me this past week. So that's great. Wonderful, man. Well, Fred, I want to thank you. I always love when you come on the show. As I said earlier, it's like it's just a wonderful opportunity to kind of learn things that you didn't either you didn't know you were that you I can't talk. I'm so blown away that I can't talk. You either learn things that you didn't know were there, or you take things to the next level. And on another note, I want to thank you. You may not know this, but I have a drinking game going on with Randy that every time someone from Autodesk mentions the Logic Forum, he does a shot of whiskey, and so that's why he's been doing this in the chat. He is gone. So like, thank you so much.
But to be honest, I mean it's invaluable information for us, right? It's we are monitoring it because we know that it's how people will like communicate their requests, communicate problems, or we'll know like what they're working on, so it give us like an idea of the market right now and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So it's really really helpful to us.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you, man. Fred's going to join us over on the Zoom, on the patron Zoom. If anybody would like to meet us over there, feel free to go to logic.tv. I'm sorry, to patreon.com/logic.tv or Logic TV and sign up, or just send Randy, if he's not too intoxicated, or myself a message, and we'll send you the link. Fred, thank you, man. And we'll see you over there in a couple minutes.
Always a
Thank you for
pleasure.
always making the time available for the Logic community.
Good. Thank you, Andy, and thank you everybody who attended the session.
You got it. All right, let's give away a couple of prizes, shall we? We're going to do 2 Logic t-shirts today. You know what? No. We're going to do 2 hats to keep some of that bright sun out of your eyes. All right, here we go. I got everybody here who signed up. We'll mix this up as best we can. And we'll spin the wheel. First Logic hat, ladies and gentlemen, is going to Burn. Congratulations. All right. And one more. Let's shuffle that up. Da, da, da. There we go. It's going to go to Paul Round, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations, Paul. I'll send you guys emails and after the show. And let's just do one more for that license of optics. Actually, we're going to do two licenses of optics as well from our friends at Boris Effects. Here comes the first one, and that's finding its way to Jason Kalinowski. Thank you, Jason, so much for being a supporter of Logic. And, oh, Josh Lawrence with the hats off comment. Very good. And one more spin here for one more license of optics from Boris Effects. It is going down to where it's so cold. John Egg. Congratulations, John. And thank you to our friends at Boris Effects. All right, my friends, let's bring this home, shall we? I know Randy loves that music, so I'm sorry to kill it. Coming up on Logic Live next Sunday, July 3rd, we're going to do one of our What's Everyone Working On shows. We're probably going to do this on Discord. I'll definitely let everybody know. But if you're available, please tune in. It's just a great way to chat about what we're all working on and share some knowledge and have a wonderful time. 2 weeks after that, on Sunday, July 17th at 2 p.m., we're going to have Render Dome 3, the Conform Challenge between Bern Hildebrand and Brian Bailey. Very much looking forward to that. And then on Sunday, July 24th, the Summer of Flame 2022 continues with our friend Stéphane Labrie, who will be on the show. If you haven't already signed up for the forum, please do. And join the conversation on Discord. This episode of Logic Live will be available on the website, logic.tv, along with the other previous episodes. If you haven't checked out the latest episode of the Logic Podcast, it's a great interview with Brian Bailey. So definitely check that out at your podcatching app of choice. I need to update this image, Randy McAtee, because we're over 1,400 subscribers on YouTube, which is great. I want to thank you for getting all of your wife's, neighbors, sisters, cousins, friends to become subscribers as we continue in our seemingly impossible quest to get more subscribers than Joel Osis. Maybe we should just merge with Joel, you know? If for nothing else, then we can hit that magic number. Thank you to all of our patrons. If you'd like to become a patron, please head on over to patreon.com/LogicTV. Outfit yourself with some beautiful merch. If you need tech support, please call Jack Horrocks at jack@flametech.com.au. If you want to save 15% on any Boris Effects product, use the Logic-15 code at checkout. Thank you to AJA, and one more time, thank you to our friends at Synesys.io for supporting Logic Live. You were there from day one, and we could not be, we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for you. Synesys.io, solutions development, integration, and support. Can't wait to see you all live again soon. That's going to do it for this week. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, everybody who makes Logic the great place that it is. And we'll see you all next time.